All right, so 2 months ago, we were approached by a company called lug+carrie, and they do subscription services for e-bikes. Now, it was pretty crazy timing because at the time, Hannah and I were looking at buying a second car. We just needed something for Hannah to be able to drop the kids off, go to work, etc., or me to ride around and drop the kids off and go to work. So it was crazy timing. Now, we were a bit dubious about this thing because we're like, oh, Melbourne weather and stuff. But to be perfectly honest with you, we have been loving it. We have been riding it non-stop for the 2 months, and here's a little bit of footage of us getting around.
It's easy to ride in terms of you don't work up a sweat, you don't exert any energy. Like, it's an easy way to get somewhere and not, be slugging it out.
Who wants to keep riding?
Me.
Do you want to go home?
Me.
Or keep riding? Now, we have been ripping around on this bike for pretty much non-stop since we've had it, and we're absolutely loving it. Sometimes Hannah rides it, sometimes I ride it, and we can't talk highly enough about e-bikes in general. I think I'm completely converted. So an e-bike is basically a normal bike. The only difference being it's got a motor down here which is attached to the crankset. It's got batteries which feed the motor. In this case there's 2 batteries. Normally there's 1, but that feeds the motor. The motor assists with the pedaling. Now it has a controller up here which you can power on the top button up here, and then you can cycle through these plus and minus settings on the side here which will cycle through the modes. I always leave it in turbo, and you can see the battery level here. So to demonstrate the power of the motor, this is me riding up a very steep hill without the motor turned on at all. And you can see I'm suffering, and you can imagine what it'd be like with 2 kids on the back. Now I've got the motor turned on to turbo and I am just cruising up the hill. So the motor makes a big difference. Here's Hannah riding up a fairly steep hill. These bikes have normal gears just like any other bike, and you can see her cycling through the gears to make it easier on her right thumb there, but she's cruising up that hill and making it look easy with the 2 kids on the back. Now I've made a couple of modifications. I've put a bidden cage, so a bottle cage on it. I've put a quad lock on it so I can carry my phone. Now the crazy thing about this bike is you can drop the kids at school, you can do all these little errands around the house, but I also have been using it to ride to work. All right, so Hannah has the car today and I'm going to work, which is probably 20-kilometre round trip, maybe 30, but got a box of goodies that I need for work for today. I've got my laptop and sling bag thingy there. Got a few more bits and pieces in the little side satchel here. So mate, all set. It's overcast. It doesn't look as though it's going to rain, but like, I'm cruising.
Hello.
You having fun?
Yeah.
So one thing Hannah and I have been finding is we've been using this bike a lot more than using our car, like for little errands to go down the shops or down to the local corner store to get some milk. We just rip around on this. Even dropping the kids at school is super convenient because you don't have to sort of get in the traffic of all the cars parking, etc. You can just basically ride straight up to the classroom and drop, like we're dropping Jack off basically at his front door. Now the good thing about the e-bike is when you're on the flats, it does about 25 kilometers an hour, which is plenty. It's plenty fast for what most people want to do. Certainly Hannah's happy with doing 25 k's an hour. Sometimes I feel like I want to go a little bit faster. So lug+carrie do two different versions of the e-bike. They do a GSD, which is what we're riding, and they do a HSD, which is the smaller version. And if you've got one child or you're just cruising around commuting to work, then the HSD is where it's at. But if you want something for 2 children, or you want to do some cargo stuff, I carry boxes to work on it. And so the GSD is where it's at for us, and it's absolutely perfect. Now, some of the negatives are things like if you're riding to work in the morning. I had one experience where I rode to work in the morning and it pissed down with rain during the day. All right, so today was one of those days where it was probably better. The car was probably a better option because I went to work in beautiful 23 degrees Celsius, and while I was at work, it pissed down with rain. You can see behind me how wet it is, and it was quite wet on the way home. Now, I didn't get rained on, fortunately, and this has mud guards, so you don't get wet from the road at all. I was perfectly dry when I got home. But on the rainy days, is it a good idea having an e-bike? And I would probably say it would have been nice to get in the car, the warm car, turn the heater on, because it did drop 10 degrees Celsius. It went from 23 degrees Celsius and sunny, and dropped down to 10 degrees Celsius and rain. So no matter where you live in the world, the used car market has gone through the roof. The low supply of semiconductors and supply chain issues have caused bottlenecks in the new car market. And I mean, there's a 12-month waiting list on most new cars. In fact, I personally had to wait nearly 10 months, I think it was, for my Prado to arrive. So there's some problems in the car market in general. According to the Savvy report, the average weekly car loan repayment is $166, and that's not including all the other expenses. Insurance, tyres, fuel, parking, tolls. And so if you've already got one car and then adding a second car to your stable, I don't know how people survive. And so then we look at the existing transport options we have as an alternative to a car, and you've got public transport.
Public transport's so time consuming. It's just not as convenient as getting in a car. It's way faster, way easier, especially with kids.
So the other option is to just ride a bike, right? I could commute to and from work on my push bike and do as I've always done. But the problem is once you've got one child come along, and then in my case, 2 children, it suddenly adds an extra layer of complexity because you've then got to get child seats. You've got to get something that's going to be a good solution for having 2 children taken on the bike. There are trailers that are available, like Thule do a trailer that you can tow behind your bike, but then you need to get the fittings for your bike and then your wife's bike, and so it becomes more complex. Really, that only leaves e-bikes, and particularly because we've got the 2 kids, cargo e-bikes as an option. You can get different types of e-bikes. You can get smaller ones and zippy, quick little mountain bikes and commuters, but we really need that cargo bike option to carry the extra load. Now this brings me to the cost of the e-cargo bike. There are so many different types of bikes available. The Turn GSD on the internet at the moment is roughly $10,000. And if I had a lazy 10 grand kicking around, I'd want to take my family to Bali with it. I certainly wouldn't want to buy a bike. So to have a subscription-based model to really have nothing else to worry about, have your maintenance sorted, all those little bits and pieces, no strings attached, it really is a very, very good option. You know, Hannah is not a big rider at all, and she's been riding this bike a lot more than what she would normally. So, you know, that's a big telltale sign that these things are fun to get around on. And I mean, the kids love it too. Who wants to keep riding?
Me.
Yeah, you having fun?
Me.
So I hope this video has been of benefit to you guys. We've really tried to get across that, you know, it is definitely, if you live in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, and I know that lug+carrie are, you know, going to explore options in the United States. Or if you have an alternative subscription service, or even if you just wanted to go buy an e-cargo bike, it is a legitimately awesome thing to have in your stable. And I would seriously consider it. If you have any questions whatsoever, I'll try to answer them, because there's a lot of questions that are, you know, associated with e-bikes, and so I couldn't really answer them all in this video. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them in the comments below. And I'll see you guys in the next video.